At 8 years old, a child is tested and assigned an IQ of 160. They are labeled a genius, yet the following decades are defined by school failure and an inability to maintain focus. The immense potential of the prodigy becomes a weight rather than an engine. To navigate this gap between talent and achievement, the subject adopts a strategy of social survival. They learn to mold their behavior to match the expectations of others, trading their own nature for the safety of external approval. Carl Jung described the result of this trade as the shadow. It is the psychological basement where we store the suppressed parts of ourselves, the anger, the jealousy, and the raw impulses that don't fit our public image. When the conscious mind is busy performing for others, it leaves a void in the psyche. While we sleep, the subconscious fills that vacuum with the very things we've spent our waking hours trying to hide. In one dream, the subject is forced to play a shoddy, half-finished theremin in front of hundreds of men. They have no choice but to try and make music with a facade of an instrument that only produces unintended squeaks and noise. Later, the setting shifts to a masterclass, where every other student holds a large, clean notebook. The dreamer looks down to find they are holding a small 3x5 spiral pad, someone else's discarded trash, filled with random scribbles and torn pages. These images, the broken instrument and the trash notebook, translate the internal sensation of being ill-equipped. They represent the shame of the imposter, who fears that their actual tools are insufficient for the task at hand. By prioritizing external validation, we lose touch with our own capabilities. The subconscious uses these dreams to strip away the mask, forcing a confrontation with the sense of fragilance that grows when we live for the approval of a crowd. The descent into the subconscious often takes a mechanical form. In a recurring dream, a massive wrought iron machine, 2 stories high, spins within a brutalist facility that smells of old oil and disinfectant. The operators of this machine are earnest fanatics. They carry themselves with the solemnity of heroes, convinced that their work is a necessary sacrifice to study and destroy a great evil. But the machine's actual function is revealed when an operative carries a young child towards its center. The device doesn't destroy evil, it consumes innocence to generate the very darkness the fanatics claim to be fighting. This process is known as projection. It occurs when the mind refuses to acknowledge its own unacceptable traits and instead sees them as a threat coming from the outside world. When we repress our inner darkness to appear good to society, we manufacture our own inner demons. We project them onto others, unaware that we are the sole source of the conflict we are trying to resolve. A direct request to see the shadow triggers a nightmare on a narrow footbridge spanning a deep canyon. The world is seen through a distorted fisheye lens, amplifying the distance to the river below. A mugger attacks, thrusting a weapon into the dreamer's groin. He doesn't want money. He demands that the dreamer voluntarily surrender something vital out of pure fear. He requires the dreamer to participate in their own loss. Nearby, a therapist character watches. She holds a clipboard and lets sheets of psychological facts blow away in the wind, using those concepts to justify the mugger's assault rather than intervening. In this internal conflict, the core self is under attack by the repressed shadow. The intellect, represented by the therapist, refuses to defend the self. It instead provides the rationalizations that reinforce the shadow's path of attack. Our rational mind can become an accomplice to our fears. It uses logic and facts to excuse our self-sabotage, choosing to justify our pain rather than allowing us to face the vulnerability required to heal. A different dream reveals a world where the subject has the power of an architect. They can reshape physical reality and their own body simply by willing it to be so. This power is dangerous. When the subject attempts to transform themselves into a pure abstraction, they lose their human form and become a mottled, billowing sheet of flesh, a monstrous wrapper flagging in the wind. The dream reveals a law. Using this power to transform the self is forbidden, unless done in collaboration with an artist. Shifting reality through raw willpower alone leads to an inhuman, empty result. This suggests that the ego's desire for total control is a trap. Forced change, driven by the isolated will, lacks the necessary guidance that can only come from the deeper, intuitive layers of the psyche. The subject is eventually shown a performance in the sky, a living sculpture that reshapes itself across multiple dimensions. It is a work of immense beauty, created by the artist, that moves the observer to a state of wordless joy. This dynamic mirrors the relationship between yang and yin. Yang represents the active drive of the architect, while yin is the passive, creative energy of the artist. Neither can function alone. The active drive must surrender to the muse. Integration requires the union of these opposing forces within the outer circle of the self. The pursuit of external validation is at odds with this internal work. To seek approval from the world is to remain fragmented, enslaving our insights to the needs of the ego. Real creative freedom begins when we mourn the parts of ourselves we sacrificed for the love of others. By withdrawing from the need for outside validation and integrating the shadow, we stop performing and begin to speak with our true voice.